So, good evening once again, and welcome to the Balie, and welcome back to those who have already been with us since the beginning. My name is Stefan Malešević. I'm the head of cinema at the Balie, and it is my pleasure to announce the second film of this year's edition of the Amsterdam Polish Film Festival, a festival that highlights the cinematic output of one of Europe's film powerhouses. This year's edition is fully devoted to one of the biggest Polish directors, Agnieszka Holland. We will screen 5 films of Agnieszka, complemented by conversations with an exciting lineup of guests, including Agnieszka herself. We have just watched A Lonely Woman, a grim look at the Polish society at the beginning of the 80s. And for the next film, we will move almost a century earlier. That will be Fever. And Fever portrays a group of Polish anarchists who are plotting to assassinate a high-ranking Russian official. Set during the 1905 Russian Revolution, when Warsaw was still part of the Russian Empire, the film centers on their preparations and growing inner conflicts as they grapple with the moral implications of their violent mission. The parallels to be drawn between the revolution against Tsarist Russia and against the communist regime controlled by USSR were evident to the censors as well. They weren't thrilled about the portrayal of Russians in the film, and this film was also banned as soon as the martial law was introduced in Poland. Before we watch the film, we'll have a short conversation that will help you maybe to place what you have just seen and what you will see in more of a context and give us a bit more of insight on the decade of 80s in Poland. So please, can you give a warm applause of welcome for Bożena Kopczyńska and Barbara Malak-Minkiewicz.
Good evening.
So, welcome, Barbara and Bożena. Thank you for coming to share your experiences with us. I would like to begin with you, Barbara, and introduce you a bit more to the audience.
Because I'm the oldest.
We have the most respect for you. Can you just keep the microphone a bit closer? Yes, that's great. So, can you tell us what were you busy with at the onset of the 80s when this film is taking place?
I was busy, as many other people in Poland, with solidarity movement. And then for a short period I was busy with prison life. And then I was busy with...
Just keep the mic like this, really, yes.
Maybe I will swallow it.
This is good. It happens to me all the time.
So I said that I was busy with solidarity first, and then I was for a short period of time in prison, so I was not very busy actually. It's a boring experience. And then I was busy with what we were calling Building New Poland, mostly. At that time, I already could get two-way passport to come to my boyfriend at the time, and later on my husband, to the Netherlands. And I was working for Radio Free Europe, trying to transmit to anybody who wanted to listen what is happening in Poland, because the official media were still controlled by the communist regime. It was quite weak regime already, but still old habits were in the place, so not really good information was passed around. That's my story.
And what was your position in Solidarity? Solidarność?
Oh, that's hard to say. I was... Of course, I was head of Solidarity at my department of psychology at University of Warsaw.
Because you were a professor already at the time.
Yeah. And I was also the advisor at the district of Solidarity of Mazowsze that was part of Poland that Warsaw is located in. And my major task there was to help Solidarity Commissions at different institutions, mostly factories, to deal with management. Workers were saying about me that I'm better even than parrots when talking to their management, and parrot is a nickname for attorneys. So it was quite a compliment, frankly speaking. And I was trying to help them to get what they wanted to. And it was very complicated because many people did believe that Solidarity was mostly a movement of people who wanted to have more money. Of course, anybody wants to have more money. But except of this, the very, very important part of this whole struggling was struggling for dignity, for recognition of value of human being. It sounds almost ridiculous that in communist system there was such a lack of respect for people that we all, in some sense, experienced. And of course, people who were working in factories, they were experienced this even more. Of course, it was related to the whole history of this region, you know, slavery. And my grandmother used to say to my father when the man was coming to repair our toilet, she was saying, Stasiu, people will be coming to repair the toilet. For her, he even didn't have a name. He was just a people. So that was a bit the general atmosphere in the country when Solidarity was born.
And when it started, it was first a trade union. So that's why people were misinterpreting it as just people fighting for higher wages. But how does the university tie into this struggle? Well,
university also wanted to belong to trade union. You know, trade union was a good label because for Bolsheviks it was very difficult to deny people right to be in the trade union because the communism raised also on the trade unionist. So it was good nickname, but of course we all have the same aims and goals, but also some different. We were representing different groups in the society.
So do you think that the movement kind of grew into something bigger, or from the beginning you had the idea that it is something big that should fight for dignity and a change of the system of values and not just workers' conditions?
I believed from the beginning that this is very big and that it will go far. And maybe not because I was smart myself, I was not, but I was in good relation with a group of Polish opposition leaders, people who came from communism themselves, like Jacek Kuroń, for example, or Bronek Geremek, who was very Nobel professor at university in history. And they really were focused on linking all needs of human being into the one human being character that could be supported by what we were calling trade union.
And at that time, Bożena, you were studying, you were a student. How did you get?
No, I wasn't a student yet. I was in a high school.
Yeah. High school student.
Yeah, I was in a high school. And I actually remember because I started a music school in Krakow. And suddenly on Sunday, the martial law began. And we didn't know what was going on. And I had to go to the house of my parents, who was in the east of Poland, because I wasn't allowed to stay in Krakow.
Were you aware of Solidarność?
Absolutely, I was aware. I don't know if you notice, actually, in the film, there is one It made me really think about my childhood, because my family, my father's family, was on a blacklist. So, for example, when I wanted to go study, I didn't get extra points because I didn't come from the peasants. But my parents were never in a party, communist party. So there is one moment when she comes to deliver the money, I think, or a letter, and there's a search in the house. That happened in my parents' house as well when I was a child. You know, that they came and searched the house. I didn't know what for and what was happening, but certainly I was aware that it was happening.
Beside the searches, we see in the film a lot of really terrible elements of a society, like people having to queue for the shops, rationing for meat.
Yes.
Do you remember it? It's a question for both of you. Was it really that bad?
It was very bad. I remember, you know, because I was only a teenager, so actually I had this, it was very tough for me because I was living at the hospital, you know, renting a room in Krakow, and I had to go to school. So somebody had to kind of had to go in those lines for me. So my mother was arranging it, and my landlady was helping me, and had to go somewhere. I think we got one chocolate a month. Then, you know, the sugar, the meat was very difficult to get. There was this little bonneches, how do you call that?
Tickets.
Coupons, yeah, that you cut out. But the people were earning actually money by standing
they were paid
in
to wait for someone else.
Yes, that guy actually in the film was earning money by standing in the lines. I know I was talking to some friends who were sort of saying that the parents, when they were going back from school to home, and they said, well, if you see the line, a queue, stay in it. You know, we might get a sugar or toilet paper or anything, whatever. Yeah, I mean, you might remember more vividly.
Well, I remember it was because I was working as a teacher at the university, so I was very busy, and I was working in Solidarity, and I was very busy. And I also, I had two siblings, and I was the oldest one. Our mother was not alive anymore. So I was feeling myself to be the one to take care of them. So I had to make those bloody shoppings and to find piece of meat to feed them, and you know, all the stuff. But I managed.
Yeah, we all managed. When you are pushed.
Yeah, but speaking of that, like we see a lot of financial poverty in the film, but we also see moral poverty. We see that everybody's turning against her. We see little compassion. Even she, Irena, gets corrupted by the end of the film. She starts stealing. She leaves her child behind. And when I hear you talking about it, I hear that there was much more hope in that time, and not just the negative effects, like
That's true, but I think that we have to think about the main character in the film we've seen as belonging to really the lowest levels of the society. Remember that she was coming from family of alcoholics, that then she had a child with another alcoholic who was beating her and then left her behind. And people did believe that especially people like her should be taken care by the communist government. In theory, it was somehow hidden in this ideology. But they were, nobody would give a damn for them. So that was the thing.
I think it's also the point that actually the communists, if you party and if you read what they stand for, they were supposed to take care of the poorest people. And they actually, in that film, they totally failed. What's very interesting, I was reading in the biography of Agnieszka Holland, because this film was smuggled and when she was in Paris, and she was showing it to many people. And on many different occasions, people said that it could have happened anywhere else as well. It wasn't only in Poland, it could have happened in another country. A lonely woman from the outside of the society.
But it makes it even worse when the regime is constantly
of course.
promising you. You mentioned this in our preparation talks. That it was,
They were promising and they never delivered. You know, that was the major thing.
and you were never a member of the Communist Party?
No.
And I can imagine, like in every communist regime, that the propaganda was very strong, like from the young age in the school and everything. So when was the first time that you realized that it doesn't actually fit together?
Well, there were many such experiences. I was coming from the family of communists. My father was Bolshevik and very devoted, so to speak. But, you know, even children have open eyes when they are walking on the streets and, you know, going to different places. One of my experiences, it was like an anecdote. I was already graduated from the university and I was a bit in troubles, and the professor of mine, who was well located in on the political map, wanted to protect me. I think that Secret Service wanted to put their hand on me. And he managed to send me for half a year to America for a scholarship. I was at the university, Lawrence University in Kansas. And the lady of the house where I was renting the room, 2 days after I arrived, she told me, listen, I have to go to Mexico with lectures. Could you please receive chimney cleaners for me? And I said, well, of course I can receive chimney cleaners for you, but what should I do with them? And she said, nothing, just make them a coffee. And I made them a coffee, and we were sitting at the table with this coffee, and we were talking like equal people, you know. I was as good as they were. I was having different job, but so what? And it was paradoxical, almost like a joke. That
they weren't just people.
Exactly, and in the symbolic capitalist country that was the bad wolf in our part of Europe, I could be equal to workers, and I couldn't be equal to workers in my home communist Poland.
In these films, we don't see much of hope. Also, the next film that we will see, just the revolutionists don't get anywhere much. And I was wondering, you know, if we look at the events of the 80s from the perspective of martial law, it would seem as if she had right, Agnieszka Holland. But then later on, 10 years later, all the struggle of solidarity led to the Round Table Agreement. So in the end, it did succeed. So I was wondering, what do you think, what made her be so skeptical about the movement? Because it's clearly a kind of a political parable. We also see people talking about Solidarność in the film, and they're only talking about it from the point of view of personal advantage, right?
Whether they can give something.
Yeah. Who is giving a car, Communist Party or the Solidarność? Yeah. You don't see, it's only in the backdrop as she's walking by, you see the demonstrations. So I was wondering, where do you think this...
It comes from because of her experiences in Prague. In 1968, she was a part of the Prague Revolution, and she had a lot of Prague Spring. Sorry, and then she had a lot of hope that something is going to happen. But she's seen it sort of within, and certainly she was very young then. I don't think she was even 20. That it put a sort of a shadow on her that she kind of saw already in 81, beginning of 81. Hold on, we have all these hopes, we have euphoria that it's going to happen, but I know it might not happen. And we also, you know, there is the aunt who is dying on a bed. She's talking, there's lots of military. Yeah, we did see it. There was a military, and we heard later that apparently the Russian army was standing ready to come in on the border. So anything could have happened then.
There were even talks about the American army coming.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of possibilities.
Yeah, but that's what I think Agnieszka was kind of having in her mind. Hold on, it can turn also differently. That's what I think a second film is much more connecting to that. You know, the revolution is not necessary always, or change that easy. It might take time. It's going to take time.
Like you did.
Yeah, like you did.
Yeah, but we were not that pessimistic. Of course, the martial law was a big shock, and you know, were almost all arrested, with the exception of few who managed to hide themselves. But somehow there was still, in our heads, there was still this idea that cannot finish like this, that we went too far, that it will somehow raise up again.
And that it grew too big, right? Yeah. There were too many people involved to just
exactly.
kill or imprison everybody.
Absolutely. You know, I can't compare my arrest to your arrest because mine was very brief. But just to tell you, when the martial law started, I was in high school, and you were not allowed to walk with more than 2 people, young people, on the street. And we just came out of the school, and we were walking on the street with the 3 of us, and we were laughing, and suddenly we were arrested for just being with the 3 of us.
Walking and laughing.
Walking and laughing, because the police thought, oh, they're laughing at me, That's... No, so we were arrested for a few hours. We sat in the big car, and then they let us go afterwards. But we went out, and we went on, and we believed it's going to change. Yep. Something is, fundamental.
Even if it takes 10 years.
Yeah, and and we were taking part in all the demonstrations. My own experience. I was playing the cello. I was coming home with my cello, taking part in demonstration, and suddenly the tanks came with the water, and I really worried about my cello, not myself, that they are going to hit the cello, run like crazy. But we all believed it's going to change, it's going to happen. We were too far.
I was wondering, are there any questions from the audience, maybe, if somebody wants to, or share an experience or a comment? There's one there.
Yeah, I was wondering, because in the movie it talks so much about alienation, and knowing that Agnieszka Holland's background stems a lot from Prague as a city and as a cultural center for the film industry and culture overall, I was wondering if maybe this theme of alienation inspired her by anyhow of Franz Kafka and what he covers in his literature, because I do see a big connection, and I was wondering if maybe you know anything about it, and if you also noticed this connection of alienation, this depressing setting, and if maybe Agnieszka Holland saw that in Prague and in the locals there as well, because it was also part of Eastern Europe and the setting there was quite similar.
Certainly, if I may say, she's just making at the moment a film which is going to be called Franz. Not Kafka, but Franz. And she said in one of her interviews, actually, that was one of the reasons she moved to Prague, because Kafka was her brother, kind of. So it's very possible that what you just described, this alienation, that's connected to Kafka, who has been there in her life from early on. Certainly.
Yes, we have one more question here.
In the film, we see a lot of how poverty really strips dignity in quite a profound way. And I was wondering if you have any thoughts on the extraordinary economic prosperity that Poland has experienced amongst the social difficulties that have co-occurred in contemporary Poland, and how Polish people relate to this time as, different to this relatively prosperous period.
It's a difficult question, frankly speaking. It's hard to say how Polish people relate. It depends on many things, on age group, on profession, of success in life or lack of success in life. I'm sometimes disappointed that young people know very little about this period. And not because I think that we all have to know very well our history. That's not my idea, but I think that knowing this period would help to understand better also problems that we are dealing with at present. We still have this big baggage on our backs of communist experiences and years after, when struggling against this from very different ideological points of view. You know, we have among ourselves left-oriented people, but also quite radical rightists. You know.
It's a tough question.
Yeah, it is a very difficult question. I mean, the Polish economy is the fastest growing economy in the last 25 years. You know, what Poland has achieved in economy and growth has taken Netherlands something like 60 years. So emotionally, in a way, we are catching up. You know, there was no time to rest, kind of, and deal with the changes and everything what is happening. That it's coming. I think we hope. You know, it has to go through a lot of changes as well. On the emotional level. It's not only that everything is much better and then economically is much better, we can travel, we can do everything, whatever we want, you know, but it's also to work through everything what has happened.
A few years ago, I was in Warsaw for a while, invited by my old department to give some lectures to the students. And I was talking to students during the coffee break. And they were complaining with almost everything. And I said, well, but you know, I said about what Bożena said, we made such a big progress. So one of the guys looked at me and said, if we made such a big progress, why we didn't make bigger progress even?
There's always more. But you said that a lot of young people are not aware of the details of what was happening in the 80s, but do you feel like the values that you fought for are still present in the Polish society, or?
I think they are.
The democracy.
But they are quite universal, you know. People want to be free, want to be respected, want to have their saying everywhere.
To vote, to travel free.
And
Exactly.
freedom of the word. I remember that when I came for the first time in Holland, suddenly I could speak and say whatever I was thinking and feeling. And that was not the case in Poland in the 80s. You could say it maybe at home, but then you were also worried if your house is not bugged, if they are not listening.
You're being followed.
If you're being followed, yeah, you were saying that you were being followed. You know, that your phones were certainly listened to. You could hear it when they were
Opening and closing the connection.
clicking, especially when you were calling abroad. Then they were always listening, so you had to be careful. And this freedom of word, I think that's appreciated by everybody, even the young people, that they can say, you know, whatever they feel, and they can read whatever they want to. It's not censored. Because, for example, that film, which we just seen, has been censored. And for 6 years, it was lying somewhere on a shelf with some parts cut out. And it's only that Agnieszka Holland herself restored it, and it was shown in full.
And you had direct experience with the surveillance state, right? You told us that you basically had an agent assigned to your case that was following you constantly. And it was almost in the open. It's like you get invited to interrogations and these same people are always after you.
Yeah, that was the rule, that you always had the one leading officer, so to speak. And mine was not too bad. He told me once that I was looking at during interrogation on the photographs of my colleagues on the board behind his head. And I probably smiled or something. And he said, oh yeah, they are nice people. And you are also nice. You know, Dr. Malak, I like you in my way too. But if they told me to kill you, I kill you. And you know what? I didn't believe him. Of course, I can imagine that there could be circumstances when he would kill me, but I also could imagine that he would do whatever possible not to kill me. So that's it.
We have time for maybe one more question from the audience. If no, okay, then we will conclude the conversation here, and we can go on to the second film. Thank you very much, Barbara, for coming, and Bożena for coming.
I thank you.
Enjoy the screening.
And hopefully to see you tomorrow.